When we think about empires, it's easy to picture just one person, right? One monumental figure standing tall. But the truth is, empires are almost never the work of a single person. They're built, they're structured, and they're kept alive over generations by leaders who have totally different strengths. And we're going to dive into exactly that by looking at four incredible kings who literally shaped the story of ancient Iran. So, that really gets you thinking. How is an empire truly built? Is it all about pure conquest, or is it about clever administration, or maybe it's something else entirely? We're going to explore that very question through the legacies of four very different rulers. First up, we'll meet the founder, an absolute master of conquest. Then we've got the organizer, the guy who turned a huge territory into a functioning superpower. After that, we'll see the inheritor, who took all that power and amassed a legendary army. And finally, we'll jump centuries forward to a reformer from a whole new dynasty who had to breathe new life into an aging empire. All right, let's start at the very beginning with a name you might know, Cyrus the Great. This is the man who single-handedly forged the Persian Empire, seemingly out of nowhere. And he did it through a series of military campaigns that were they were breathtaking in their speed and their scale. Okay, check out the velocity here, because this is what's so wild. In 550 BC, he conquers the Medes. Just 3 years later, boom, he takes the incredibly wealthy Lydian Empire over in modern-day Turkey. And then he sets his sights on the biggest prize of them all, Babylon, which falls to his army in 539 BC. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. 3 of the world's great powers all absorbed in just over a decade. Cyrus wasn't just a king, he was a force of nature. His legacy is one of pure foundational conquest. But that raises a huge question, right? Once you've conquered the world, how on earth do you actually run it? And that brings us perfectly to our next titan, Darius the Great. Now, he wasn't a direct descendant of Cyrus, but he came to inherit this massive, sprawling territory. His genius wasn't so much in conquering new lands, but in figuring out how to hold all of it together. He was the ultimate administrator, the ultimate organizer. So, here's his brilliant solution. Darius knew there was no way he could rule everything directly from the center. So he broke the empire down into these manageable provinces called satrapies, and each one was run by a local governor, a satrap. This decentralized system was an absolutely genius way to manage a diverse and enormous kingdom. And this is where you really see his bigger vision. He didn't stop there. He introduced a standard currency, the daric, and a single system of weights and measures. I mean, can you imagine how much easier that made trade across the empire? He also established Aramaic as the common language for government business and built the famous Royal Road, basically an ancient superhighway connecting his vast territory. Darius took Cyrus's raw conquest and forged it into a stable, unified, and efficient superpower. So, this organized, wealthy empire now passes to our next king, Xerxes, who happens to be Darius's son. Now, Xerxes inherited a superpower that was already built, already humming along. His story is really about what a ruler does with that kind of immense inherited power. At first, he kind of followed in his dad's footsteps, finishing up these grand building projects at the imperial capitals. You can see him here securing his legacy, continuing that imperial vision. But his real ambition, well, that lay somewhere else entirely. Xerxes is, of course, most famous for that monumental invasion of Greece. Now, let's set aside the outcome of that war for a minute. The real key takeaway here is the sheer power it took to even try something like that. He mobilized the full might of the Persian Empire to put together one of the largest and most complex armies the ancient world had ever seen. His power wasn't in building or organizing, it was in mobilizing. Okay, now we're going to take a pretty significant leap forward in time. The Achaemenid Empire of Cyrus, Darius, and Xerxes, it eventually fell to Alexander the Great, and for centuries, the region was under foreign rule. But Iranian power wasn't gone for good. Centuries later, a new dynasty, the Sasanian Empire, rose up to reclaim that legacy. And it's in this new era that we meet our final titan, Khosrow I. He ruled a much later Iranian empire and was facing a whole new set of challenges, including the super-powerful Byzantine Empire to the west. His reign shows us yet another form of power, the power of revitalization. Khosrow's strength really came from a dual focus. On one hand, he was a brilliant military commander. He took on the Byzantians, expanded his empire's influence. But on the other hand, and this is key, just like Darius centuries before him,
He was a dedicated reformer. He was building infrastructure, overhauling the administration, and strengthening the empire from the inside out.
So, we've just looked at 4 incredibly powerful rulers from ancient Iran. But what's so fascinating is that each of them was powerful in a completely different way. Let's kind of put it all together and see what that looks like.
This chart really lays it out perfectly. Cyrus's power, it came from raw conquest, from expansion. Darius's came from his brilliant administration and unification. Xerxes' power was all about that massive military mobilization. And Khosrow's, centuries later, came from his ability to both fight wars externally and drive reform internally, revitalizing his empire for a whole new age.
And that brings us all the way back to our original question. What is the true measure of a great ruler? Is it the one who conquers the land? The one who organizes it? The one who can wield its mighty army? Or the one who rebuilds it? As these 4 titans show us, there might not be a single simple answer. The true measure of power might just be providing what an empire needs at that exact moment in its history.